guys, it's Kathy. I started a minute early. It's because my last stream was late. It evens out. It's called balance. Alright, so the first video we were watching is 15 minutes long. The next video is 50. We won't get through that. We're going to stop a little bit at, I don't know, around 8. Unless it's good, then a little bit after 8, but not too much after 8. So let's go. Sheesh.
Your Honor, just as we finished our colloquy this morning, I asked Mr. Harmon, as he was exiting, what arrangements could be made to observe the sampling of the sock and any other item that the FBI was going to do for purposes of EDTA testing. And he indicated to me as we left that that would not be permitted. And
no observations, no outside observers.
yes,
No,
and
no photography and no videotaping.
I understand that to be the policy. Now, again, this raises, just in terms of timing and equity, the same point that I made this morning, but I didn't realize that this would actually be the case with the FBI with respect to this test. And that is that if, for example, they are going to be cutting apart the sock, as Mr. Harmon indicated this morning they would be at various different points, we would not have an opportunity to examine that sock, to look at it under a microscope, to examine it before it is again cut and destroyed. We want that opportunity before the witnesses get on the stand and they testify to have our experts look at it. Now, the court did note this morning that I think the actual term you used was examine, that Dr. Blade had a chance to examine the sock.
No, I thought I was being very precise in what I said. He's had the chance to observe it and to photograph, conduct photographs, or had the opportunity to videotape. However, I note, just so the record's clear, that he did not physically.
Okay, how do they do it in other murder trials? Here's what I assume, and I might be stupid because I'm not a police officer or anything, but I assume when there's a murder, the police collect the evidence, they send it to the forensic lab, and the forensic lab does all the tests and then presents the evidence, which means they cut up clothes and they do everything. They do all the tests. I've never heard of a murder scene where they collect the evidence and then they can't do the test that they want until they give all the evidence to the defense, and then they can get it back and finish their tests. I've never, ever, ever heard of that before. When there's a murder or anything, the forensic lab gets the evidence and they cut it and they do little tests on it and everything. So I don't get it.
Touch it, feel
Yes.
it, look at it.
Yeah, that's the problem, that he doesn't have the opportunity to do that, nor does he direct the examination in any way. Mr. Sims gets samples, does what he wants with them. Dr. Blake is there simply as a recorder and an observer. And that's the problem here. So again, I would beseech the court to permit us, with respect to the sock, to have that opportunity, perhaps this weekend, so that we can have our experts examine the sock along with the other evidence, so that we can at least see it before they perform a destructive test. And I think that's consistent with the reasoning of Griffin and some ground that we traveled over once before this August.
About 3 times before. All right. Mr. Harmon?
It's just amazing. They just don't want us to do this the way we've proposed to do it. And if we reflect back on when I first broached this subject, I invited them to avoid this very thing by joining with us. Let's not, don't make us pick a lab that you don't like and then want to nitpick with discovery. And I have a little difficulty with Mr. Scheck's surprised that that the FBI won't allow visitors. He knows that. He's a national DNA expert. They just don't allow that. So this feigned indignation or surprise is, to borrow one of his favorite phrases, disingenuous at best. We could have avoided this had they sought to do this to find out the truth of what's in those socks and now the gate stains, which have been identified as Mr. Simpson's. And they didn't do it. And now we have finally found a schedule that pleases this court, and they want to do something before that to interrupt the logistics.
Doesn't please me, it mollifies me.
I'm not sure I'm in the business of mollifying anybody, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
Well, lawyers should always be in the business of mollifying the court.
Only when it suits the ends of justice, Your Honor.
All right.
Dr. Blake has seen these things. He's seen when they've been sampled. I've recounted a day in the life of Gary Sims, October 27, when they were there till midnight. And now, you know, we're in the business, or we've been setting up this elaborate pickup and delivery schedule where we will get the evidence where we said we would on Friday, and now they want it to be someplace else on Saturday and Sunday. So I'm at a loss to do anything except to say, you have told us what we could do. That is what we would like to do. We will be glad. Everything's been documented. There's nothing to fear except the truth of, is there any EDTA in that sock? And that's what we want to get to the bottom of, and we will know that Monday evening, and Mr. Scheck can then have at it. He can have his Fry hearing or whatever else he wants to. Somehow the talk of all these Fry hearings tells you that they know what the answer is going to be. And there's a reason they know, because somebody at the end of the table told them that. So we just like to...
I object to that. I think that's highly improper. It serves no purpose whatsoever. And if this is a legitimate motion, let him make a motion. But if he's here to give speeches to the public, we have a place out.
Well, counsel, come on. Well, Mr. Harper.
That's hilarious because that's all the defense is doing. The defense is coming into the courtroom and trying to do a murder trial. And then after it's over every day, they go out and give these long speeches to the public, which is completely different than what happened in the courtroom. But that's hilarious.
Harmon, actually, the issue we're discussing here is the FBI policy regarding outside observers. Will they be videotaping?
No.
Any photography conducted during the course of their testing? I assume some.
Whatever they routinely do, I'm ignorant of that point, Your Honor. I'm sorry.
All right, so it's your position that this is the lab that can do this test, and that's their standing policy, has been their policy forever and ever.
That's absolutely correct. Mr. Scheck knows that, too.
All right.
Could you know, since we're adding things on the calendar, where's 47, 50, and 78? You ordered them to tell us where that is, and we're dying to find that out. So,
Well, I want to just hear the last comments about the FBI policy.
Okay.
Then I'd like to hear from Mr. Hodgman on the non-biological evidence, and then we'll shift into the whereabouts of those three other items.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
With respect to Mr. Hodgman, Your Honor, may we, he's not down here, and may we request that we address the non-biological evidence first thing in the morning?
I was told we were going to do that at the close of business. We were supposed to do it today at 9 o'clock. And you asked leave, or Mr. Harmon asked leave on Mr. Hodgman's behalf to file a letter with the court, which I have been expecting all day and has not arrived. I was told that Mr. Hodgman was on his way down.
It does not appear to be the case. We have not had a chance to discuss this with Mr. Hodgman. The first I heard that he was coming down with any kind of letter was when the court told me just a few minutes ago.
Well, this was the beginning of our discussion at 9:30 this morning. If you recall, my recollection is that you were here in court with us.
That was concerning biological evidence, Your Honor.
Correct. And the agreement was that Mr. Hodgman, I had entered an order that all the non-biological matters be turned over. I recollect Mr. Harmon then asked would I put that off until the end of business today to allow Mr. Hodgman to examine the list and lodge any special objections, which I said I would give him leave till the end of the day today. So I assume either I'm going to get a letter from Mr. Hodgman laying out specific objections and/or a waiver of the objections to the order of turning over the biological evidence, to non-biological evidence. Speak of the devil.
I've been called many things.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hodgman, and welcome.
And good afternoon, Your Honor.
I'm happy to see you again.
Thank you, sir.
I feel some responsibility for your absence the last few days, last several days.
Don't take any responsibility on yourself, Your Honor. I think the responsibility was mine, but I appreciate the thought.
Well, I'm concerned that the pressures and the pace of this case are going to take its toll on everybody involved, and I'm considering modifying the court hours simply because of the physical stress that's involved. And I think I recollect the last time we met that I had never seen you quite in that state before, and you and I have known each other for many years, and so I feel some responsibility for having caused so much stress in your life. I apologize to you for that. But having said that,
Your Honor, I do have a matter to raise with the court this morning, hence my arrival. Before I address the court, may I have just a moment with counsel,
certainly.
my fellow counsel?
The whole prosecution team was sweating there for a minute. They didn't know he was coming. The judge said, "Oh, he's coming." I was sweating there for a minute. It's baseball season. What happens in the dugout stays in the dugout. When I was at work yesterday, the patrons would come in and say, "Yeah, why do you have the Steelers on? You should have the Eagles on." What? There is no Eagles. Oh yeah, we're replaying the Super Bowl. They're just replaying the Super Bowl over and over. And everybody was like, "No, it's baseball season." It's baseball season. Everyone was fighting over the TVs. Football, baseball, football. It's duck season. It's wabbit season.
Your Honor, in order to expedite matters this afternoon, I've prepared the letter which I have served upon the court as well as counsel.
Okay, let's take it from the top. Items, Category 1, items which the people reasonably anticipate will be subject of imminent introduction at trial. And what are these items? I don't have my correlation list immediately at hand.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 18, athletic shoes, Reebok. Item 19, hair and fibers which were removed from the number 9 glove. Item 27, a plaid cap. Item 35, keys, which were recovered from the ground at the Bundy crime scene. Item 40, a white metal ring recovered from the Bundy crime scene. Item 46, a menu or paper menu recovered from the Bundy crime scene. And item 110, which consists of some hairs and fibers collected from the glove, otherwise referred to as item number 9.
All right, when you say imminent introduction, Ms. Clark, when do you anticipate getting to these items?
Eminent, 2 years from now.
I believe the plaid cap, the ski cap, are going to come on with the very next witness. The keys are going to... And I believe Todd as well will come on with the next witness, Your Honor.
Who is the next witness?
Detective Lang.
I'm sorry, I was...
Detective Lang.
Lang.
And the ring as well.
Have we identified that ring as belonging to anybody?
Yes. Lovely.
The other
And the menu also. I mean, these are all coming in now. I mean, Friday. Or tomorrow. For the Detective Phillips.
All right, let me ask as to items 113, 160 through 169, 221, 225 through 235 items in paragraph 2. Mr. Scheck gets the representation of the people that these items have already been examined by the defense.
Do you recall this, Mr. Chairman?
All right, let's do this. Counsel, I've had my court reporter working all afternoon, so let's take a break. Why don't you guys compare your notes, because you attorneys compare your notes. I've been criticized for referring too generically to you all. Why don't we compare our notes to see which items, because by item number I can't recollect as to what each one of these are. Let's compare our notes and then we can confer in chambers afterwards. I need to give my court reporter a break. All right. All right, we'll stand in recess then as to 9 o'clock. We're in recess until 9 o'clock. I'll talk to Mr. Scheck and Mr. Hodgman in chambers. Reflect that we have now been joined by all the members of our jury panel. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Detective Ron Phillips is still on the witness stand on direct examination. Good morning, Detective Phillips. Detective, you're reminded that you are still under oath, and Ms. Clark, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I wonder if that insert that we just had was in the wrong spot. I don't know.
Good morning, Detective Phillips.
Good morning.
Yesterday, I believe, when we left off, you had gone to the guest unit that is behind the main house at 360 North Rockingham, and you said you went and knocked on the door.
Yes.
When you knocked on the door for the first time, what happened?
I knocked on the door, nobody answered the door originally, so I bent down because the louvers on the bottom part of the door were open, and I peered into the louvers. Be a hand and an arm in a lying position, and told the detectives that there was someone in the room lying down, and shortly thereafter, someone answered the door.
And that's someone that you later determined was Cato Kalin. Is that what you testified to?
Yes.
All right. Now, when you first contacted Mr. Kalin, you identified yourself, sir?
Yes, I did.
What did you say to him?
Told him I was Detective Phillips from the Los Angeles Police Department, and I'd like to speak to to Mr. Simpson in the house.
And what was his response?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Go to explain subsequent conduct, right?
Overruled.
He either said that he wasn't there or he didn't know if he was there. I'm not exactly sure now exactly what he said.
Okay. And did you ask any further questions of him?
No further questions of him, no.
Did you want to find out whether there was someone around who could get you into the house to look for Mr. Simpson?
Yes,
Did you make any inquiry of him in that regard?
yes.
And what was that inquiry?
He brought it to my attention that Arnell, Mr. Simpson's daughter, was in the room directly to his right. And he pointed down the walkway to another room.
And so he pointed out Arnell's room in response to your question about where Mr. Simpson was.
That's correct.
Now, did you tell him what you were doing there, why you were at that location?
No.
Why not?
Didn't know who he was to begin with. Didn't want to cause any hysteria around the residents by telling the wrong person the wrong thing. I wanted to tell this to Mr. Simpson himself.
Did you know at that time whether he was related to anyone on the premises?
I had no idea who he was at all.
So after he pointed out Arnell's unit to you, what did you do?
I walked down to Arnell's room.
And was that right next door to his?
Yes, it was.
And was everybody with you at that point when you walked down to Arnell's room?
Only Van Adder and Lang walked with me. I believe that Detective Furman stayed behind with Mr. Kalin.
Did you actually see him go in and talk to Mr. Kalin?
No, I didn't.
But he did stay behind with him while you went next door.
I didn't see what he did. He just didn't follow me.
What happened next?
Knocked on the room that had been pointed out to me as Arnell's room, and someone asked me who it was, and I said the police, and then a female answered the door.
And that female, did she identify herself?
I asked her who she was, and she told me her name was Arnell Simpson.
And what did you say?
Told her I was Detective Phillips from the Los Angeles Police Department, that we had an emergency, and I'd like to know if her father was in the house, we needed to talk to him.
And what was her response?
She made a statement to either Van Adder or Lang, and I didn't recall exactly what that statement was. It was something to the effect, "Isn't he there?" And then they began to talk to her.
And you said, when she said, "Isn't he there," you mean in the house?
That was speculation.
Well, this is hearsay. It's not for the purpose of explaining subsequent conduct at this point.
Who's right?
I'm just asking for her.
Sidebar,
Yes, yeah.
without the reporting.
That is super freaking cool. You know that, right?
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Clark, you may continue.
You don't have to answer. Actually, you can just answer a generic question. I'm not asking you how much you earned as an extra in this movie with Sean Penn. All I'm asking is about how much do extras make for a movie, for riding a bike or something. Do you make more for riding a bike than you do for just standing there eating ice cream or whatever?
I'll move on to the next question. And after Arnell asked you that question, what happened next?
Myself and the other two detectives and Arnell walked towards the main house.
Now, during that time, could you hear conversation going on in Cato Kalin's room while you were talking to Arnell?
No.
Did you walk with Arnell somewhere after you spoke to her?
Yes.
And where did you walk?
Walked to the rear of the main house, not to the rear of the main house, but the back portion of the main house, where there was some French doors and another smaller door right next to it.
When you walked toward the main house, did you pass by Mr. Kalin's room?
Yes.
Did you look inside?
No, I didn't.
Where did you go?
Walked up to one door that led into the house, and Arnell Simpson unlocked the door for us and opened the door.
And did you all walk inside?
Yes.
And that was who at that point?
That was Arnell Simpson, myself, Tom Lang, and Phil Van Etter.
You went in through the rear?
Yes.
And where'd you go?
We walked in through the living room area and then into a kitchen area. And from the kitchen area, we walked around to a maid's quarters that was off the kitchen.
All right, now let me ask you something, sir. Before you actually went into the house with Arnell, you indicated that there was a conversation that took place while Arnell was still in her room between Detectives Lang, Van Adder, and Arnell Simpson?
Yes.
Okay. And were you present during that conversation?
Yes.
Do you recall what they said to each other?
I don't recall the entire conversation.
Next question.
All right, when you entered the rear of the house with Miss Simpson, what happened first? What was the first thing you did?
We walked into the kitchen area through the living room, and we went into this room right off the kitchen, which turned out to be a maid's room.
Why did you do that?
We went in there to see if a maid named Gigi was in the residence,
Why were you looking for Gigi?
because we had been told outside the residence before we ever entered it that there was a full-time maid that was supposed to be living on the premise. And Arnell had made reference to Gigi when we were outside the residence before ever entering.
What was that reference that she made?
Something to the effect, isn't Gigi in the house, or something of that nature.
So you were looking for Gigi?
Yes.
Why were you looking for Gigi?
Well, we had been told by the West Tech people that she was a full live-in maid, full-time, and Arnell had already also brought her name up. So we thought if we could find her, she may know where Mr. Simpson was at in the house.
And you went into her room then?
We just went into the room briefly, yes.
And what did you see in the room?
There was nobody inside the room, and the bed was completely made, and the room was well organized, and didn't appear that anybody had been in there recently.
Then what did you do?
Walked back out into the kitchen.
Now, was Arnell talking to you during that period of time?
She was right with us.
And what was she saying?
Wanted to know what was going on.
Did you tell her?
I did not.
Why not?
Wanted to talk to get to the, wanted to find out where her father was first, talk to her father first, and Tom Lang was talking to Arnell at the same time.
But why did you want to talk to Mr. Simpson before you told Arnell Simpson what was going on?
Because I didn't know how upset she was going to get with the information. She may become hysterical about it, and I wanted to keep everything as calm as could be until I could get a hold of Mr. Simpson himself.
Did you want to keep her, did you want her assistance in trying to locate Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
So what did you do?
I asked her if she knew of any way that I could get a hold of her father, and she said that a lady named Kathy, his secretary, always knows where he is. So I then asked her if she could get a hold of Kathy, and she did. She got a hold of a Kathy on the telephone.
Okay. And was that in your presence?
Yes,
Were you present then when she spoke to someone named Kathy?
yes.
And after that, what happened?
She told Kathy on the phone that the police wanted to talk to her, and she handed me the phone.
And then did you speak to someone on the other end of the phone?
Yes, I identified myself as Detective Ron Phillips of the Los Angeles Police Department, and I needed to know if she knew where O.J. Simpson was at.
Did you tell her why?
No, I did not. I told her we had an emergency, but I did not tell her what the emergency was.
Did she ask you?
She asked me what was wrong, and I told her I couldn't tell her. Told her I'd call her back and tell her later.
And again, why didn't you tell her?
But
Oh. You can answer.
it's for the same reason. I wanted her cooperation in finding out where Mr. Simpson was first. Didn't want her to become alarmed and upset and hang up on me and then make the phone call herself.
And why didn't you want her to make the phone call herself? What was...
Because I had the information of what I needed to tell Mr. Simpson, and I wanted to make sure he got it firsthand from me and not secondhand from somebody else and not the facts.
Someone who didn't know what was going on.
That's correct.
And what information did this person give you?
She told me that Mr. Simpson had gone on a red-eye flight the night before and had traveled to Chicago, and that he was staying at the Chicago O'Hare Plaza Hotel.
Did she give you the phone number?
No, she did not. She didn't have it, but I thanked her very much for her cooperation, and I called information and got the phone number.
Okay, did you do that immediately after you hung up with her?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do immediately after you got the number?
Called the hotel in Chicago.
And did you ask for Mr. Simpson?
I asked for O.J. Simpson's room. I asked if Mr. Simpson was registered at that hotel, and they said just a moment.
And then?
Shortly thereafter, a male voice, which I recognized as Mr. Simpson's voice, answered the phone, and I asked him, I said, "Is this O.J. Simpson?" And he stated, "Yes. Who's this?" And I said, "This is Detective Phillips from the Los Angeles Police Department. I have some bad news for you."
Okay, can we hold on 1 second here?
Yes.
What phone did you make that call from?
The telephone in Mr. Simpson's kitchen.
Your Honor, I have here a board that I've shown the counsel.
Mrs. Robertson? '67.
Thank you. Do you see the exhibit that's just been placed next to you, People 67?
Yes?
And do you see the portion of that, do you see, first of all, what that is?
Yes, it is.
What is that?
It's a general telephone bill from a residence.
And you see the phone number without reading it
Yes?
out loud?
Right.
And do you recognize the phone number?
Yes?
For what, excuse me, was that the phone number of the phone that you used to call Chicago from the defendant's residence?
Yes?
Do you see the portion of that bill that is highlighted?
Yes, I do.
And does that indicate that there was a call made from the phone in the kitchen of the defendant's residence to Chicago at 6:05?
Yes?
Well, I think the objection, I don't think that builds up the phone. It's made in the kitchen.
Sustained.
And that speaks for itself.
Sustained.
Oh, it always saw that, Your Honor. Does that reflect that a phone call was made from the defendant's phone on June 13th at 6:05 to Chicago?
Yes?
And the phone number to Chicago that is shown at 6:05, is that the phone number for the O'Hare Hotel, O'Hare Plaza Hotel that you called?
I don't. It looks like the same phone number, yes.
Ms. Clark, do you want to have that board shown to the jurors in the cheap seats?
What I thought I would do is actually show on the Elmo, Your Honor.
All right. Let me ask, is this still Mr. Simpson's phone number, counsel? Okay. I didn't want to send it out if it was still his phone number.
With regard to the number?
Yes.
Yes, may I say a word to Ms. Clark? If you're a minute. just a moment. I want to maybe approach on it. Sure. I'm just concerned about some of these other people's numbers. So there's been a lot of calls that have gone out. So
Yeah.
I know this would be a great breaking point, but let's just go for a few more.
All right, thank you, counsel. Ms. Clark, why don't you have one of your assistants take the board down at this point? All right, is there a stipulation that you care to offer?
Yes, Your Honor, rather than air the phone numbers of everyone else on the bill, we will stipulate that the defendant called, excuse me, that the Detective Phillips called the defendant in Chicago on June 13th at 6:05 a.m. No, you're taking it. At 6:05 a.m. And the call lasted for 5 minutes.
I stipulate the Detective Phillips called Mr. Simpson at 6:05 a.m.
In Chicago on June the 13th.
Yes.
And
From
call
the
lasted-
defendant's-
And the call lasted 5 minutes, and the call emanated somewhere from the defendant's residence.
So stipulate, yes, sure.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, a stipulation is an agreement between the attorneys as to the facts of the case. You were to accept the stipulation as evidence. The reason we're doing this is the phone bill has other persons' phone numbers on it that we just don't want to subject to any undue harassment because of this case. And there's no dispute as to the phone number. All right. Thank you, counsel. I appreciate that.
Join you.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Your Honor. And then you spoke to someone who acknowledged that he was Mr. Simpson.
Yes.
What happened next?
I told him that who I was. I was Detective Ron Phillips from Los Angeles Police Department, and that I had some bad news for him. And he said something about, what's that? And I says, well, I've got some bad news. Your ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, has been killed.
What happened next?
I think the first words out of his mouth were something to the effect, oh my God, Nicole is killed, or oh my God, she's dead. And then he got very upset on the telephone.
And then what happened?
I kept trying to calm him down, and he continued to be upset, which I expected. And he continued to be upset, and I finally said, Mr. Simpson, please try to get a hold of yourself. I have your children at the West Los Angeles Police Station. I need to talk to you about that. And he stopped and he said, what do you mean you have my children at the police station? Why are my kids at the police station? And I said, because we had no place else to take them. They're there for safekeeping. I need to know what to do with your children. And at that time he said, well, I'm going to be leaving out of Chicago on the first available flight. I'll come back to Los Angeles. Is Arnell there? And I said, yes, she is. And he said, let me talk to Arnell, which I gave the phone back to Arnell.
Now, did he ask you when the murder occurred?
I didn't tell him that she'd been murdered. I told him she'd been killed.
Did he ask you when that had happened?
No.
Did he ask you how that happened?
I object to this, Your Honor. What's all the counsel, I object to this form of question, Your Honor. This man just...
Wait.
Objection, Your Honor.
Wait.
Object, I'd like to object.
Yes, with the sidebar.
Donald coming in with the pro tips.
All right, proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did Mr. Simpson ask you how she was killed?
No.
Did he ask you when she was killed?
No.
Did he ask you if you had any idea who had done it?
No.
Did he ask you where it had occurred?
No.
Did he ask you anything about the circumstances of how his ex-wife had been killed?
No.
Did he proceed to speak with Arnell and give her instructions about the children?
Sustained.
Sorry. Did Arnell have a conversation with him after you spoke to him?
I handed the phone back to her, and I assumed she talked to him. I didn't listen to it.
During the time that you were speaking to the defendant, do you know or could you see where Arnell was?
Yes, she was standing directly behind me and listening to my conversation. Tom Lang was also informing her of what had happened, and she became very not hysterical, but very upset.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Certainly.
I didn't know half of this stuff, and it's so sad. I think it was in the preliminary hearing where they were talking about how OJ walked into the restaurant, went to the table beside Nicole, flipped a chair around, and just sat there and stared at her without saying a word while she's eating dinner with all of her friends, and just sat there and stared at her the whole time. And when Nicole came out of the house, he's going to kill me this time, or he's going to kill me. I mean, I didn't know any of that. None of it.
All right, after you handed the phone to Arnell, what happened next?
They kept talking to Arnell, and I believe she wanted to make a phone call to a man that she only described as AC, which she did. And then I walked out of the kitchen.
Where did you go?
I just went over to a doorway that led out to the front of the residence. It was kind of a, I don't know, patio type, well, it's off the kitchen. It leads out to the Rockingham gate, towards the Rockingham gate.
And what were you doing out there?
Just standing there. Tom Lang was basically talking to Arnell, and there was nothing left for me to do, nothing for me to do at that time.
What happened next?
I was approached by Mark Furman, Detective Furman, who walked up to me and said,
Object what he's saying, what you're saying.
Sustained.
Did Detective Furman tell you something?
yes, he did.
Your Honor, this would go to explain subsequent conduct.
I think you can handle this without doing that.
Okay. And after he told you that, whatever he did, what did you do?
I followed him.
Okay. And based on what he told you, why did you follow him?
He wanted to show me something.
Where did you go?
He took me around to the south side of the residence, to a walkway on the south side of the residence. It ran east behind the residence. We walked back there for a considerable distance till we got to a certain point, and he stopped and he pointed out an object to me.
Okay. This is a good stopping point. Guys, thank you so much for coming out today. This one was good. Can't wait till tomorrow. I didn't want to stop. I will see you all very shortly, or tomorrow, or in a couple hours. Who knows? You never know. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I'll see you again soon, guys. No, I'm only working a single today. And it's Thursday, so it'll be nice and dead. Yo. Bye, guys. Thank you.